Hello and welcome. Good afternoon. I'm just going to give 1 minute to allow most of our attendees to come in before I start the introduction. Well, I can see a couple of familiar names on our attendees list. That's cool. You're all welcome once again. Good morning, Lana. Good morning, Jacqueline. Let's do this. Good afternoon and welcome once again. For those of us that are joining us for the first time, my name is Gagba Shokomiche Yahaya, and I'm the training coordinator with the Temple Small Business and Development Center. At the Temple Small Business and Development Center helps small businesses start and grow. We offer free one-on-one consulting and a variety of low to no-cost webinars. We are proud to be part of the nationally accredited network of the Small Business and Development Centers, which has over 1,000 networks across the United States of America. You are here this afternoon for a webinar on Let's Get Users to Your Website. A copy of the PowerPoint and the link to the recording will be sent to all the attendees. Being a webinar, all the attendees have been muted. However, we always encourage you to drop your question in the Q&A or the chat box. Without further ado, please allow me to welcome our wonderful presenter, even as she takes over the floor for the presentation. Ms. Jenny, you are welcome.
Thank you, Garba. All right, let me go ahead and get into my presentation. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited to be back with the Temple University Small Business Development Center. I think this webinar series is a really great program, and we really enjoy presenting these. So we're going to talk about websites. You've built it or you're building it and you're not sure what's next. How do you get people to actually visit this thing? Just building it doesn't mean that they will come on their own. You have to start driving traffic. So quick background on me, if you haven't been in one of the previous webinars I've presented. I am the co-founder and marketing director for BrandSwan. We are a branding, web design, and marketing agency. I am also obsessed with efficiency, and I am a reformed perfectionist. So I love templating things out, and I'm all about the deliverables, the timelines, what's next, who's doing what. So you'll see some of that in that presentation today. I also love giving free consultations. So if you have any questions about anything that I talk about today, and you're like, I'd really love to pick her brain for half an hour, feel free to use the links in this presentation and schedule with me. I am more than happy to do that. Quick background on BrandSwan. That's me and my business partner. We started BrandSwan 2 years ago, but we both had our own businesses for about 9 to 10 years before that. Currently, we're at about 11 for the team, and we really enjoy bird puns. So you might see a few of those throughout the presentation. All right, the website's there. How do you get people to visit your website? The first thing I'm going to tell you is to switch your thinking around. Instead of how will I get people to my website, how will your clients find information? Because that's where you need to be. You need to be putting your website in all of the places that they're looking for answers to their questions. So try to put yourself in their shoes, and then that will make the rest of this easier. All right, so in the description, we said it sucks to host a party and then have no one show up. And building a website can feel that way sometimes. So the way that you get the word out about your party, sending out those invites, SEO is one of the biggest ones. Search engine optimization is all of the ways that you can improve your website so that Google will say, hey, this is a great website, and put you higher in the page rankings so people find you on page 1 or page 2 instead of buried way down there on page 50 where nobody ever makes it. Because when people are searching for something, they might make it to page 5, but not many people are getting past the first couple pages before they'll change their search words and they'll try again. So just a quick note on how people are using search engines in the first place. The different types of SEO that we're going to talk about today, well, actually all of the types, all of the ways we're going to get people to your website. SEO is the biggest one, and there's a few different varieties of SEO. So we'll talk about what it looks like to optimize on your website, on-page SEO, what it looks like to optimize off your website, which is off-page SEO. We'll also talk about other ways to share that are not related to SEO specifically. We're actually going to start there because those are some of the less complicated methods. So anything your business creates should ideally have your website and contact information on it, as well as some kind of call to action. That's kind of like our marketing 101. So when you think about the ways that you promote your business, maybe that's print, maybe you're making ads, you definitely got business cards, I assume, brochures, flyers, posters, things like that. Also, any PR that you're doing. So TV, radio, if you're doing presentations like I'm doing today, hopefully you're mentioning your website, you're making it really easy for people to go visit it. Even things like hosting contests or entering contests, email, social media, online platforms, anywhere that you are going in your business capacity, you should also have some way to share your website. So if it's, say it's a virtual networking event, they usually at some point let everyone introduce themselves or put their websites in the chat. Make sure you're doing that. And if you're putting your website into a Zoom chat, make sure that you're putting the HTTP in front of it. You copy the whole link because that will look like a link in the chat and people will be able to click it. If you only do part of it, they have to copy and paste it and you're making it just a little bit harder for them to follow up. So with that said, if you guys want to introduce yourselves and put your own websites in the chat, I would be delighted to see some of what you guys have put together so far. This is, after all, a business thing. So you're all business owners and you all have interesting things to share. All right, that was it for the non-SEO methods. If you guys have any questions about those, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to dive right into search engine optimization. So starting with on-page SEO, this is everything that you can do to your website. So when you're building your website, these are the things that help improve your search rankings. And in general, Google will rank you more highly if it perceives that your website to be helpful. And also it checks to see if your website is functional. So you want to make sure that there's not broken pages, that all of the links work on that page. And so when we talk about usability, that's some of those things. You also want to look at how fast it is, how well it responds on mobile, and then some of these other back-end things that I'm going to get into more. So here's a quote from siteimprove.com. You might think that changing the URL on a page on your website is not a big deal. But if that means that when people are clicking through, they go to a 404 page or a broken link page, they're that much more likely to just leave completely. So you may have lost a sale or you may have just lost web traffic. So think about that when you're changing things within the site and make sure that you're testing fairly often so that you're not breaking links in your website and just losing people for no reason at all, right? So in general, usability. You want to make sure that your content and your images are loading. We talked about links. You want to make sure that there's no broken links in the website. When people are looking for information, it's easy for them to click through and find what they're looking for. And then no orphaned page content means that there's no pages that you've created that are not linked somewhere. So if you have a new service and you make a page for it, but you don't add it to the main navigation on your website, then people are not going to be able to find it and it's not actually helpful. I'm sharing a link in here for a broken link checker. So if you have a big blog or you have a lot of pages and it's not doable to go through manually and check everything, that is a great resource. For a lot of this other stuff, making sure that the images and content are all there, a lot of times you do have to do that manually. So have someone in your organization, whether that's you, maybe it's an intern, someone who hasn't seen the website before is a great choice because they'll notice things that you won't. And just have them click through the pages real quick and double check that all the buttons are working, especially if you've updated something recently to make sure that you didn't make a mistake when you added a new button or you changed page content. I think a lot of people have heard this statistic before, but still true. 40% of consumers will wait no more than 3 seconds before abandoning your site. So when we're talking about that slow loading website, you don't have that long before people are going to leave. So 2 to 3 seconds is how quickly it loads. And if it takes longer than that, then you need to start looking at the resources that you're using on your hosting package and ways that you can speed up your website. You could also take a look at things like the size of your images. A lot of times people are uploading images at full resolution, you know, that full resolution you got from your fancy camera or your photographer, and that is not what you should be using for web. There's a different size and resolution for web images, and there are WordPress plugins that can help you with that. There are also tools like Page Speed Insights, which I've linked here, and that will give you a quick grade on your page speed, and it'll give you a list of suggestions for how to improve it, which is very helpful. Just enjoying you guys sharing your links in the chat. And Susan, stress management, something we all need, self included. So page speed, why is it important? Other than just losing visitors, you know, if it doesn't load in the first 3 seconds, Google is also taking a look at this. They're checking to make sure you're loading quickly. And if you're not, then they're not going to rank you as highly because they know that's not useful to their audience. Everything that Google does to decide which sites come up first is based on their users, and they want people to keep using Google as a search engine. So they want to make sure they're providing them the most value for each search that they do. So just keep that in mind. If you're wondering, will this make Google happy or not? Ask yourself instead, will this be useful or valuable to my audience? And if the answer is yes, then Google will probably like it. So we've gotten to the point where mobile traffic has exceeded desktop. So more people are browsing the internet on their phones than they are on their computers. And I think, again, hopefully this is a familiar concept. This was back in 2018 that it was 58%. At this point, it is probably much higher. I haven't seen a new study for 2021, but especially with like the pandemic and people being home, I bet you this is much, much higher. So if your website is not responsive for mobile, if it doesn't look good on a phone, then you are behind the times and you are losing, you know, whatever that percentage is now, whether it's still 58 or whether it's up to like 80%, that is the number of people that are going to be looking at your website that you might be losing if your website is not working well on a phone. This is easy to test if you're not sure. Literally just open the website on your phone, check it out, scroll through, make sure that the page content, the most common mistakes are that the page content doesn't resize, so you have to scroll sideways. For whatever reason, we're all very comfortable scrolling up and down on phones. We don't like scrolling sideways. So if your website has to do that and you're wondering, is this that big a deal? The answer is yes. A lot of people will not want to do that. The other thing to check for is how big the font is. Can I still read it on my phone? Can I still click the links and the buttons? Or do I have to like pinch and expand and go find it? So anytime you're requiring them to do extra work, chances are they're not going to bother. They're going to go find a website that does work for mobile. Good thing to know, Google is taking into account what device the user is on when they're searching through Google. So if your mobile score is bad, that will affect your search rankings for mobile, but it will not affect your search rankings for desktop. So that's, you know, like you're not completely screwed. You're still going to get the desktop users, but you're missing out on the majority of the searches. So that's why having the mobile experience high as well will be very important for you. Cosette just asked, do you have to register with Google? No, there are a couple things you can do with Google that I'll get into as far as having like a Google business page. But in order to show up in Google search, you do not have to do anything other than have a website that is searchable by search engine bots. Like they have little algorithms that go out and just crawl the internet. And so as long as you don't have settings that make your website hidden, you'll be okay. And if you don't know what those settings are to hide it from the search engines, then you probably don't have them turned on. Okay. Quick question from the chat. Do e-commerce solutions like Shopify enable mobile optimization automatically? And the answer is most of the time. So Shopify, I think, is pretty good. Most of the other website builders that I've seen, like Wix or definitely Squarespace, they have a pretty good mobile experience. WordPress as well. So double check, and the best way to double check is to browse the themes that they have available and then resize your screen so it's tall and skinny, and then just see what they look like, or just look at them on your phone. And if you're visiting and you're browsing themes and they look good on your phone, then they're already responsive and you're already good to go. Okay. So if your website is not mobile friendly for whatever reason, say you're not using Squarespace or you're using an old theme that wasn't updated, there are some things you can do to help it resize. There's also certain things like maybe you have an image that loads well on desktop, but then it's too big for mobile because your phone doesn't have as many resources as your computer, depending how old your computer is. So sometimes it'll seem like a video or an image works well, and then you try it on your phone and it just doesn't load, or it slows down the whole site and it takes a long time. So one thing that you can do is have page elements that are visible for desktop, but not for mobile. And again, this kind of depends on which website builder you're using, but that's a trick that we use on our own website, which actually I could demonstrate now. I wasn't planning on it, but let's go ahead and take a look at BrandSwan. So our website has a lot going on, just, full disclosure, and you can see some of those things popping in a couple seconds later. So for mobile, that was hurting us, and some of these animations as well. So when you resize this thing, you guys are going to get to see my background. You can see that they just disappear completely because we're like, we're not going to slow down the mobile experience for something that's really just aesthetic. It's not that important. And so that's an example of a responsive design. Not only is it resizing, but different elements are available based on what device you're on and how quickly it's loading. And then page speed insights. We talked about that before, but it also gives you some good tips for mobile and responsive. So it's a good tool to just give you a list of to-dos for how to improve your website. And if you work with a web developer, then you can check their work and you can be like, hey, can you fix this stuff for me? All right, so content is, I hope you've all heard this quote, content is king. The most important thing you can do is have valuable content and also think about your content in a deliberate way. So instead of just writing, filling your website up with fluff, you have to think about what are they searching for? Does my content talk about what they're searching for? Am I using the same, oh, am I not? View, slideshow. Thank you, Lavanya. So, sorry, I lost my train of thought. But making sure that it is written to address the things that they are searching for. And that way you're including those keywords and you're telling Google as well as those users that this is relevant to their interests. So just some terminology to kind of get us started with the content conversation. Keywords, this is the search terms people use to look for information. So you see up here, if someone was searching for our services, maybe they say web design Delaware, then these are the results that pop up. The page titles are these links that show up, these clickable links here. You can see BrandSwan. We're fighting with some of these other designers to get to the top of the first page. And then the meta descriptions is the information that shows up underneath. By default, your search results will pull the first couple sentences from your page, but a lot of times the first couple sentences aren't necessarily the most valuable or important information. So think of a meta description as a summary of the information that's on that page. You're not going to expect them to dive right in if it says like, welcome to our website, we're so happy you're here. Like, okay, that doesn't tell me what this page is about. But these little summaries say like, hey, we're a Delaware-based web design company. Here's some stuff about the websites we do. Ours has our mission statement. So Delaware Web Design Branding and Marketing. We help businesses, professionals, and nonprofits. So that tells you like, hey, if you're in one of these categories, this might be a good place to go. And then the resource that I have included on this slide is to research keywords. So if you're like, okay, now that I know what keywords are, that's great, but I don't actually know what keywords people are using to put into the search engine. So one of the easiest ways you can find out is by simply asking them. So as people are coming to work with you, you can say like, oh, hey, how did you find us? Or did you search for this service on Google? What keywords did you use? You don't have to say keywords. You could just say, what did you type into Google when you looked for us? And that's been really enlightening. Like we've found out variations on web design Delaware versus Delaware web designers, and small things like that can make a big difference. Once you've decided what your keyword's going to be, you can use tools that will give you scores and help you, guide you through it. Or if you don't have a tool, maybe you're using like Squarespace or one of those other things that says they're going to do it for you. Just make sure that the Squarespace layout knows what your keyword is. They have a whole panel for the SEO stuff, and then supposedly they'll do it for you. I don't know how well they do compared to doing like a website yourself with WordPress. If you do have a WordPress site, there are tools like Yoast. This is an example of Yoast. It's a WordPress plugin. And so literally I'm typing in web design company, right? Best web design company. And then these are the results. And so it's telling us what we did right. Like, okay, you did a good job distributing your keywords. It's in there the right amount of times. It's in your image. You've described what your images are about. So these are all the things that we did right. Here's the thing where it's like, you have it, but it could be a little bit better. And it tells you exactly how to make it better. So, hey, you have the keyword in the title, but it should be at the beginning instead of at the end. So I love that the tools break it down so that you do not have to be an SEO expert to understand how to implement these tools or implement these changes. And then the problems. So they're flagging us for like a double H1 tag. And that's something that I guess that might be a web designer type thing. Key phrase in the subheadings. Okay, you have them in your title, but you don't necessarily have them in your other headings. Those are things that we can change now that this has told us. All right, so Lena says, will the slides be shared after the workshop? Yes, 100%. They will also send out this recording. So all this information will be available later. Pamela, is there something similar to Yoast that you can use if your website is on Squarespace? So Squarespace does have like a panel with SEO options. I don't know that they have anything this in depth, but they do also have like this whole, I think it's the app marketplace where you can add extra functionality to your site. So it might be worth taking a browse in there to see what they have. I don't know off the top of my head, so I apologize for that. We typically build websites in WordPress because we want to be able to customize everything. But all of the different site builders have their own tools. So it's worth taking a look definitely in that marketplace to see what other snippets they have that you can add. And they might call it snippets, they might call it apps, they might call it plugins. They all have a different word for it, but it means the same thing. It means extra functionality you can add to your website. Okay, so say you don't have this tool and you just need some basic guidelines for how to use those keywords. You want to use it not in every single headline, but like maybe every second or every third one. And then if you wanted to measure like the keyword density, anywhere from 0.5% to 3%. So that means that 3% of the words on the page should be the keyword, which is kind of a lot. So you might use it more than you would naturally. So just think about it as you're writing paragraphs. Is the keyword in that paragraph? Is there a way to make it fit naturally? Don't worry about putting it in if it doesn't make sense. You don't want to sound like a robot because your audience is not robots and they'll think it's weird. And Google is also getting better at catching things that are not written for actual human beings. So write for humans first and then add keywords if they make sense. Also make sure you're including that keyword in your meta description and then in the alt tags for your images. And I think I have that. Yep, here we go. Okay, so now that we've talked about the keywords and writing the content, and so before we're talking about the words, right, the actual text you're putting on the page, now we're going to talk about the images that you put in. So the alt text is the text that will come up for screen readers, and it also is something that Google looks at to determine what the page is about. So you want to make sure that you're including them because you want your website to be usable for people. You want it to be accessible for people who are using different tools to help read through websites. So someone who has like a visual impairment might use a screen reader and it will be describing things to them. So definitely have an alt text that says, here's what this image is about. This image is just like a header graphic for a blog. So there's not a whole lot to describe, but say you've got like happy people on the beach. Is there a way to get your keyword in there? Maybe if you're an insurance agency, you could say, family having fun on the beach, not worrying about their insurance because it was taken care of by blah, blah, blah insurance agency. That's really long, but that's a way to describe what the image is and still get your keyword in there. If you can find a shorter way to do that, awesome. It really just depends what kind of images you're using and how relevant they are to what you do. So that was alt text. Title text is what it sounds like. It's the quick summary of what the image is, and that is mostly used within your website builder so that you can find the image again. So make that title, if the keywords fit, great. If they don't, make the title something that you will be searching for, just like when you're naming a file on your computer, because you want to be able to find it again. File names. The best file names are short and use relevant words or keywords. And for the title and the file names, in the past, Google has used them when it's been checking your website for what it's about and in the search rankings. Not 100% sure if it still is, because different people have different opinions about that, and Google doesn't tell you exactly what they're looking at with their algorithms. They're changing it all the time as well. Kind of like Facebook, or should I say Meta. And then the last thing to know about images, and maybe the most important, is we talked about how images can slow down your website. So definitely check the size of those images and try to get it down. So when you save something for web, the resolution is 72 pixels per inch, whereas a normal image is 300 pixels per inch if you're going to print something. If you don't have a tool that can resize images, there are some tools online where you can upload and it will compress them for you. If you're using WordPress, there's a plugin called Smush, and it does exactly what it sounds like. It smushes your images to make them of smaller file size. All right, I see a question from Cheryl. Do you have a preference in online create your own website builder? I actually just did a presentation about this a couple of weeks ago. My preferred platform is having a WordPress site that you self-host, because as web designers, we want to customize everything. And so we don't like being limited by the different theme builders out there. But for other people, yeah, that's hard. It just depends what your needs are for your website, because if you have a complicated site, like say you're doing a lot of e-commerce, I would say go ahead and use Shopify. That's one of the best ones for adding lots of products. It's designed specifically for e-commerce, so they have features for that that the other ones may not have. Technically, Wix and Squarespace can do e-commerce too, but they just aren't as developed in those areas, because for them, it's an extra feature. It's not the main thing they do. Oh, schooling/education. I'm sorry, Cheryl, I'm not sure I understand the question. Okay, well, anyway, to finish, that is the company. Oh, for schooling and education, got it. Okay, so for online courses, that is a whole different thing. Okay, well, I was gonna say Squarespace is probably my preferred one for just standard website builder. I'm not a big fan of Wix because I've seen so many issues with like the page speed and things not loading or changes not saving, and their support is pretty much non-existent. For schooling or education, if you have online courses, there are a lot of platforms that are dedicated specifically to that. So I don't have one off the top of my head to recommend for you, but I will say this: anytime you have a specific purpose for your website that is not just to have a page people look at, do a little bit of research and compare the features, because a website that is developed specifically for online courses is going to be better for you than just using Squarespace. So yeah, sorry, I don't have one off the top of my head. But if you want to talk to me later, we could definitely look at that together and I could come up with a recommendation. All right, so that is everything that, well, maybe not everything. That is the overview of what you need to know about optimizing your website for search. Off-page SEO is a different animal. And the reason for that is because you can't necessarily control other websites. You can control what happens on yours. So optimizing your own website is easy, or maybe not easy, but it's something that is under your control. The other websites, you have to kind of ask for help, or you have to use other tools, or sometimes you have to pay for directories. But it is important and it's very helpful, because Google's looking at your reputation in the industry, and the way they determine that is by how many websites are linking back to you, and also how relevant those websites are. So don't ever buy links, because having 100 spammy websites linking back to you is not going to help you. Having 10 websites that are actually in your industry and that have good SEO themselves will help you much, much more than, you know, those hundreds of fake backlinks. Oh, okay. People are making suggestions about the online courses, Teachable or Kartra. So Teachable I know of. Kartra I actually haven't heard of before. And I'm sorry if I've gotten behind on questions. I'll go back through later. All right, so we're going to talk about backlinks and ads specifically. So like we said, Google is looking at your reputation in industry. It's looking who's linking back to you. And as this article from Moz said, A backlink is a vote of confidence from another website that you are a useful resource and they're okay with their users leaving their website to go visit yours because they trust you that much. So that's kind of what a backlink is saying. Every link on another website that links back to you is a backlink. So it's what it sounds like. We talked about the spammy websites. So you don't really want backlinks from spammy websites. You can't always prevent it. Sometimes people add you automatically, but don't seek them out. Ways to build backlinks. There's tons of strategies that we'll talk about guest blogging, but I've had so many people email me asking to guest blog, and you can tell that they're emailing hundreds and hundreds of people because it's a form email and it's topics that aren't relevant, right? Like, I think your audience would be really interested in this travel blog that I've written. Like, okay, but we're a web design company. So guest blogging, I think, works a lot better if you have a relationship with other bloggers. But there are websites that are blogging websites like Medium, or one of our clients uses Bigger Pockets, which is for real estate investing. That is very specific to their business because they are a tenant screening service. So it makes sense for them to blog there because they're reaching a new audience, and then they can link back to their own blog in each post that they write on Bigger Pockets. So that's one way to do guest blogging. Directories is probably the simplest way because you can find directories. Some are free, some are paid, but it's simple, right? You pay, you make your profile, and now if the first search result that comes up is Yelp, or in our case, Clutch is one for web designers. So Clutch is the very first result, but Clutch will link back to us. So our search results are improved because we're on Clutch. But if they don't make it to the 5th one down and they go straight to the Clutch one instead, they'll still find us because we're on that directory. So choosing which directories is, again, pretty simple. If you Google your keywords and some directories are on the front page, those are the ones that you want to get added to because they're the ones that are doing well. So don't bother with directories you've never heard of or directories that don't come up in the first page or two of Google, because if their SEO is not good, then they're not going to help you at all. Just ignore them. Someone asked earlier about if you need to have an account with Google. So you don't need to have an account, but a Google business page will help you. And so, and actually I might demo this too so you can see what it is. The Google business page is what comes up when someone searches for your business. And so this is another way, it's another tool basically. So when people search for web design in Delaware, there's several ways that they might find us. So this is a regular search result here. Here's BrandSwan. Or maybe they'll find us in this Google Maps list of web designers because we show up in there as well. Or if I search BrandSwan, then the Google business page pops up. So it's another tool and it's another way to show up. And if you want to show up in Google Maps, then you're going to need to have a Google business page. So these pages are not that complicated. You need to have a Gmail account to use them. So when you sign into this or when you want to create one, they're going to ask for your Gmail account. You can use that for all of your Google services. So if you're going to make Google AdWords, if you're going to use the Google console, I would recommend having a Gmail account, even if it's not your main business account. Or if you're using Gmail to use your custom domain stuff, like we have Google Workspace. And so it's jen@brandswan.design, but we're logging in through Gmail. So I can use that email here. And then you make this page. And then you can fill out like your services, your hours, information like that. The more you fill out, the better this will do. And then also the more reviews that you can collect on this page, the better that will do. So then you have those 2 shots at getting discovered. You have the regular search rankings, and then you have Google Maps. And so if someone comes and they want to view all of the people on Google Maps, your ranking here will be different than your ranking on the first page. But as one improves, it's likely the other one will improve as well. This is kind of cheating because it takes your location into account. So even before we were on the first page, I still saw BrandSwan pretty high up because my address is really close to the company address. So they're like, oh, the very closest web design company to you is your own company. Anyway, just giving you a tip for when you're seeing how well you're doing. Okay, so getting back into the presentation, that's the Google business page. Yes, absolutely set one of those up. Collect testimonials on there. Testimonials are great content for your website or for your social media as well. So there's really no downside to that. Set up your social media accounts. Every link that goes back to you is going to help you, even if it's the one from your Facebook account or your Twitter account. When you're posting social media content, you know, as much as you can, include your link in those posts too, because even if you're not getting credit for Facebook linking to you, you are getting every click from that tells Google, hey, people liked this content and they like visiting this website. Maybe we should boost it in our search rankings as well. Some other backlinks. Press releases to the local media. So if you want to get featured on a news outlet, they're almost always going to link to your website when they talk about your business. So that's a great way to do it. And then paid sponsorships. So anytime you are a sponsor of an event, maybe a nonprofit, even just like a fundraiser, they will share your logo and they will share a link to your website. That can kind of depend, because if they're not in your industry, again, that's not going to be as valuable as something that's related to you. But I've been to a couple of 5Ks recently and they have their list of sponsors. And so there was the 5K for Faithful Friends, right, which is an animal shelter. And then they had dog food companies as their sponsors. And I'm like, well, that is brilliant because it's in that industry. And not only do they know everyone attending the 5K has a dog, but that backlink is going to be really valuable from the website, because this is an animal nonprofit linking to an animal supply store. So that's an example of a really relevant sponsorship. There's a link in here to show places that you're getting clicks from, who's already linking to you, in case you want to see if anyone has your backlink already. Sometimes you'll find some really surprising ones. And then also, that's so search.google.com. The search console, it will tell you the backlink sources and it will also tell you the keywords people are using to find you. And so you can look, and if you see like, hey, these are really not relevant to me at all, that means you probably need to rewrite your content to make sure that people are getting to your website because they're interested in what you do and not for some random reason. Okay, so Pamela says, if you are a home-based business, can you avoid having your personal address as a location? Yes, yes, you can. So I have several clients who were worried about that. You need to share your address to verify your Google business page, but there's an option to check that this is not an address that people can visit and that we offer remote services only. And so that would be the option you would select to make sure it doesn't show up in Google Maps. So you use your address to verify and for it to put a pin in the map to show where you are, but it doesn't actually give people your actual address. It just gives them a general area that you serve. So we have published our address, but for some of our clients, right, they gave us service area, like, oh, I serve Delaware, or I serve, you know, within 30 minutes of Newark, New Jersey, things like that. All right, so we are going to talk about paid search. This I thought was very interesting because so many people say that ads are the end all be all, you know, like you have to pay if you want people to get to your site. But according to this, organic search is 53% of website traffic and paid search is only 27%. So you might consider ads, but it's not the majority of search. And, you know, obviously it comes at a cost because you got to pay ad budget. And if you don't feel comfortable doing the ads yourself, you have to pay an expert to run them for you. So it can get pricey and it's always a gamble. You know, like one ad run will do amazing. Another one that's very similar won't. And there's a lot of factors that go into it. We're going to talk about a few of those things. This is by no means a complete tutorial on ads. And I know that the Small Business Development Center has a ton of workshops. I would be very surprised if they don't have one specific to advertising, and Garba can let me know if there is one coming up. Okay, so many different platforms to run ads on. A lot of people ask about Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Every social media network you can think of has some type of advertising that goes along with it. Also Amazon, Google, there's display ads that just show up in the search engines or that follow you around on different websites that have display ads turned on. And then there's ads based on like geolocation. I don't know as much about those, so I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I will talk about some of the things you need to know when you're creating an ad. So I talked about ad pricing. It varies widely. It depends on your industry. So like nonprofits, have some of the cheapest ads because they also have some of the highest engagement on their social posts. So because people are more likely to engage with them, they're more likely to get clicks and traffic and other things they might be looking for. And so the ad will be cheaper because they'll be getting more clicks because people are more interested in it. It's not as much of a sell for the social media network to get people to click that ad. When you're trying to decide if you want to pursue that ad, I would say don't just look for benchmarks like how much do ads cost, but look for, use the word benchmarks. That's important when you're searching for this, and it will come up with different studies, but say like Facebook ad benchmarks for real estate, something like that. And one of the things that we learned, again, for our real estate client, is that real estate is one of the highest priced industries. So their ads are more costly than they would have liked. We ran a couple, we found that, hey, we are sticking around the benchmark cost. They didn't like that, so we didn't continue. And I think having that information was really helpful because instead of thinking, oh, our ads didn't do well, we're like, no, they did roughly average for our industry. This is a harder industry to run ads for. And then the other thing to note as we go through the different options for ads is that A/B testing is really important, and that is running different versions. So trying out different images so you can compare which ones do better, trying a static image versus a video versus a gallery. There's so many different formats to try, and sometimes a small thing that you don't necessarily think will change your results will end up having a big impact. All right, I'm just going to check the time real quick to make sure I'm not running over. All right. Number one thing for ads, targeting. Oh, and actually, you know what? This example here is the Google ads. So in case anyone hasn't noticed this already, when you search something on Google, the first 4 results are not the organic search results. These are ads that people have paid to run here. So if you're wondering like, oh, I'm number 5 on this page, how come I can't get any higher? It's because the higher ones are paid content. So if you're not paying and you're here, you're doing really well. And then this is an example of an ad in Facebook. Facebook has gotten really sneaky. Like it looks like it's just part of your regular feed and you have to look for that little sponsored link underneath the ad name. But if you see pages that you never followed intentionally, it probably is an ad and it's probably just sneakily tucked into your feed. Okay, anyway, targeting. So this is deciding who you're gonna serve the ad to. This is the absolute most important thing. Because if you're targeting the wrong people, they're not going to do anything with your ad. So in our case, right, we sell websites. If I end up targeting college students by accident, they don't need websites. They're still figuring out what they want to do with their lives. That is the wrong people for us. And if we just target everyone, again, we're completely missing out because business owners are a small portion of the population. So for us to target everyone is to, and I don't know what percentage of people are business owners, but let's say it's 15%. So 85% of our ads are wasted money because they're not hitting the people that we actually want to see our content and people who actually might find our content helpful. So that's why you really need to think about who your audience is, make sure that you know which factors are important. Don't just grab a random age range, you know, like, oh, I think my people are 40 years old. Okay. Is that what really matters, or is it more about their interests or their behaviors, right? On LinkedIn, you can get really detailed analysis of people's jobs. So their seniority in the company, what industry they're in. And so if you know the employment status of your audience, that can be a really great network for you to look on. For a lot of like retail stuff, that doesn't matter as much, but maybe it's more about their interests, right? Interested in gifts, or maybe it's interested in charities and fundraising. So depending on what you're doing, think about the details that are available on the network that your audience is on. So you know your audience is on Facebook, but you're not able to get the targeting information you need because people don't really put their job stuff on Facebook. Maybe ads aren't the way to go. Or maybe you try to find your audience on LinkedIn and see if they're there. So thinking about which options are available on which network and then making sure your audience is on that network. Because if they're not there, then running ads on it is not going to help you. Let's see. So we talked about A/B testing. And we talked about the platforms and the different options available. One network I have not talked about is Quora. Quora is like a question answer website where people ask questions and then people will write really long, detailed researched answers. And because you know exactly what people are talking about on that forum, those ads are very good for targeting specific interests. And you can also target topics so that your ad is popping up based on a topic that people are writing about, even if it's not the exact keywords. So Quora is one that's very interesting. And that is spelled Q-U-O-R-A, if you guys haven't heard of that. Okay, so after the audience is the goals. What do you want people to actually do with this ad? So one of the things that social media networks will say is like, oh, likes or, like brand awareness, what does that even mean? People liking your page or liking your post. And so you have to pay attention to what exactly you're supposed to get out of this thing. You will get, you will get a much higher conversion rate for things like engagement, because engagement just means that they looked at a video or that they liked your ad. And so, okay, that's great. We got 100 likes on our ad, but does that mean anything? Did they then become clients? And so that's why a lot of times I'll say, if you can focus on conversions, like actually visiting your website or making a sale, that's a better way to see the return on investment for your ads, because you know what they did after they saw your ad. But those are much more expensive because so fewer people are going to do that. So it kind of depends on your strategy. Are you casting a wide net, hoping lots of people will see it and then come buy from you later? Or do you want to know exactly who is buying from that ad? So those are the things to think about with those. More terminology, pay per click. Some platforms define this as clicking on the ad, others define it as clicking a link to visit your website. So you really have to check and make sure that you understand the definition on the platform that you're using, whether that's Facebook, LinkedIn, or something else. Pay per conversion. So we just talked about conversions. Facebook will let you define what the conversion is on your website. So it can be clicking a button, filling out a form, making a purchase. It's kind of a pain to set up because you have to set up tracking code in your site. So that might be something where you want to run that type of ad, but you don't want to do the initial setup. Maybe you hire a professional to do the first one for you, and then you can keep using that tracking code for other ads later on. Oh, and then the cost. So we talked about how it's more expensive. So conversions might be like $15 per conversion, whereas clicks could be as little as 15 cents. But think about the actual ROI of those two things. And then the creative, which shouldn't be the last thing, but it is. Now that we've decided the goal, the audience, we have to think about what are we going to actually say and what is this ad going to look like? So different formats. A lot of times people like seeing video or they like seeing some kind of interactive format. So it's like, oh, I don't want to make video, but you could make a slideshow. All you have to do is make 4 images instead of 1, and then you can share more information without cluttering up your ads. Typically, some best practices, don't fill them with text. Less text is better. People like to look at faces. So if you have an event graphic, put those speakers on there. Words and images, think about the types of emotions you're pulling in, or maybe you're talking about the benefits of a service that you're offering. What is the thing that grabs people's attention? And then maybe you think it's the benefits, but really it's the getting to know the owner, right? Like they want to feel comfortable with you more than they want to know the bulleted list of benefits of the product. So A/B test those two things and see which messaging works better. Yeah, and then like I said, A/B test. Facebook is making it easier and easier to A/B test things. They will literally let you upload 5 different images, 5 headlines, 5 captions, and it will scramble them up and find the best combination for you. So A/B testing is getting easier than ever. All right, that is the end of the information portion of this. So if you have questions, go ahead and start filling up the chat, ask those. I have a couple additional resources if you want to check this out later. Maybe you're thinking about, how do I target that audience? I don't really know who they are. We have a worksheet that kind of works through who your audience is. It asks questions about their demographics, their obstacles, how you're going to help them, and the questions that they're asking. So this can be a great starter place. This is a free worksheet on our website. Links are in the presentation. And then if you are less interested in ads, but you're more worried about SEO and keywords, this is a website content questionnaire. And so this is another template that can help you write content for your website. If you're not sure what to put on your homepage, you're not sure what to put on your service page, it's just a big outline with lots of things that your target audience will be wondering when they get to that page. So if you answer these questions, they can be a great starting point for writing copy for your website. So like I said, links are in this presentation. So we've got those two worksheets that I mentioned. We have a little bit more information about SEO on our website, and then I have my consultation link as well. And then the resources that I linked throughout the presentation, checking for broken links, page speed, researching keywords, backlink sources, and overall site performance, all of that is linked in here. So you guys can go out and start optimizing your websites and hopefully getting some traffic. All right. Going back through the questions, because I know I missed some.
Jenny, I think we have one on the Q&A from Pamela. I don't know if you've actually touched, if you've touched it, yeah.
Yeah, so that was the one about the Google business page.
Okay.
Yeah, and hiding your information.
Okay. To our attendees, even as the questions keep coming in, I'm just going to post a 30-second survey about today's webinar. Remember, we cherish your feedback, and even as it helps us to improve on the services we provide to you at a low cost, and even as it's also required by our funders. So kindly take your 30 seconds and help us to fill out the 30-second survey, please. I just pasted it. I guess we have one from Lee. Jenny, I don't know if you can see it from our Q&A.
Yeah. Okay. So C. Cosette Lee asks, why did you choose the colors for your website? So if you're asking about BrandSwan, we did the logo first, we did the brand, and then we built the website. And so I don't know if you guys want to see it. BrandSwan. So we did the logo first, and so that gradient became the colors that we used. And part of the reason for that is our target audience is business owners, but it's also, it leans a little bit more female, and we just kind of embraced, exciting in color and not being afraid of being feminine. So we have these like curvy fonts, and everything is very optimistic and upbeat and about like reveal your inner awesome. So we kind of just like leaned into it. We didn't worry about being stodgy and professional and appealing to like corporations. So that's why we have the color choices that we have. And we have these black feathers on a lot of our social media too, if you ever go look at those. Some other ways to identify good keywords besides asking your clients. So one of the tools that I shared in the presentation was a Google keyword planner. And so that's literally like you open up the Google keyword planner, you can type in keywords and it will tell you how many searches there are per month for those keywords. And it will also tell you relevant keywords that are doing better or worse. So it will give you a whole list of related keywords and then you can find, and that's a great way to start. Like, I think people are searching this, but it turns out they're actually searching this. And it will also tell you how much competition there is. So if there's high competition, it means that a lot of websites have optimized for that keyword. If there's low competition, it means that nobody's optimizing for it. And so that could be a really good opportunity for you to use that one that has lower competition. Okay, so Jennifer says, I will have 3 locations, but I'm not the owner of any location. I am bringing my service to different locations on different days. How would you put that on a Google business profile? I think for that one, it would be kind of what we said about hiding the location. So I think what you would do is put areas that you service, but not necessarily put a specific address. And then you could definitely mention it in your about or in your bio. You could let people know where you're going to be. But for the profile itself, either you have an address or you don't. It's not going to let you use a different business's address. So I would say you're probably going to have to use whatever your home address is or whatever your home office is for your business, and then just hide it and tell them that you service people in other locations. Oh, it's been overwhelming, but really great. Okay, well, that's great to hear. It is overwhelming. I can't really tell you anything else about that. It's a lot of information, and there's so much further we could go into it too. All right, Felice asks, how do you add a meta description? So this is going to depend on your website builder. For a WordPress site, it's down at the very bottom of your editing options, and it just has a spot that says meta description, and you fill that in. For like a Squarespace website, when you are editing a page, it will have the page info section. So most of them have a place to edit the title and to edit the meta description. So you just have to look for like the page settings on whatever your website builder is.
Okay, Jenny, I think we have a couple of questions from the chat box. Let's start from Sarah Brindle. I guess that's where you actually stopped.
Okay.
Sarah Brindle.
Okay, so Sarah asks, how do you do the A/B testing on Facebook? I don't think I can give you a quick answer for that without going into like the Facebook Ads Manager. So there's different ways to do things on Facebook. You can easily boost a post from your page, but if you want to build an ad and if you want to do A/B testing, you have to go to Facebook Ads Manager specifically. And as you're building an ad, once you get into the creative section, you'll see that it lets you, like underneath the headline, there's a little plus, and you can just keep adding as many headlines as you want. And same thing for the image, it'll let you upload more. So once you get into Facebook Ads Manager, that option is in there. But honestly, teaching you how to use Facebook Ads Manager is a whole separate presentation. All right, the link for the worksheet on your site. All of the links will be shared with this presentation, which I don't know how long it takes to send out, Garba. A couple days?
They'll probably get it by the end of today.
Okay, so you'll have that by the end of today. Okay, so John says, can you comment on the colors of your page that are the same as the letterings? That is a little difficult to read the words. I don't know which page, but if it's on our website, so typically contrast is important. So you don't necessarily have to do white on black or black on white, because sometimes that can be almost too much and like make our eyes tired. You know, we look at screens all day, but a dark gray on a light background or a light gray on a dark background or something like that. In our case, we do have a lot of colors, which I think might be what you're talking about. And we check to make sure the contrast is high enough, or for some of the stuff on our website, like a lot of times our slogan, reveal your inner awesome, is in a gradient. And that's because it is more of a style element. It's not that important if people read those words. So it depends what the content is. Is it content that they need to read and that is crucial for them to understand your website, or is it a decorative element? And so the rules are different depending on what you're doing with it. All right. The page that is behind me now. Oh, my background screen. Yes, so that's what I was talking about. This is our slogan, reveal your inner awesome, and it's a design element. If you don't read our slogan, you will still know what you need to know about me. So that's why we do it that way. It's also, actually, it's kind of a joke because reveal your inner awesome. And so it's like the shine is slowly being revealed from the background. So we did that on purpose. All right, Venetia's gonna revamp her website. All right, we have a couple more minutes, but.
Yeah, we have a couple of minutes left. We have like 2 minutes left before we wrap it up for the webinar. Before we definitely bring you to an end, I want to use this opportunity once again to thank each and every one of you for keeping it a day with us. You know, thank our special speaker, Ms. Jane. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all the effort. Thank you for all the explanation, and thank you for answering all the questions that actually came on board during the presentation. And to my fellow team members of Temple Small Business and Development Center, thank you once again for your usual effort, your time, and for making it possible for this webinar to come into existence. I think just a quick one before we wrap it up, we have a question from Pamela. Jen, I don't know if you can see it.
Yes, so lots of different ways to answer this, but I think it depends what types of blogs you're writing. If you want to use your own blog to improve your SEO, you need to write long blog posts and you need to use your keywords strategically. If you just want a backlink, you can write shorter posts and just make sure to mention your own website, like, you know, come check us out over here, or, you know, there could be an author bio that links back to your website. So it really just depends, but it's easier to post blogs on your own website because you don't need anyone's permission. Guest blogging, you have to like go ask people if they'll share them, but the posts that you write can be a lot shorter if you're posting somewhere else. So up to you what type of blog post you want to write.
Okay, Jenny, thank you for that. And once again, thank each and every one of us for keeping it a day. Jenny, for the last time, thank you and see you some other time. Do have a nice
Thank
day.
you.
And have a nice day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yes, please.